Jey Uso is the new World Heavyweight Champion after he defeated Gunther at WrestleMania 41 this past weekend in Las Vegas at Legion Stadium. And on the Raw after Mania, Jey had a nice little celebration with Jimmy Uso and Sami Zayn to ring in the Yeet era. It's officially here, whether everyone likes it or not, which we know maybe everyone doesn't. Still, Jey has become the world champion, and the crowds are still behind him. They are yeeting nonstop everywhere Jey goes. Jey Uso, the world champion. We never thought it would happen, but we're here. And so we're going to talk about something, though, that WWE very clearly dropped in terms of a big hint when it comes to what's going to be, maybe not next, but what's in the future for Jey Uso. And I know, as we talked about in the Raw reaction show that we did live here on the channel, some of you guys have already seen it. But humor me for a second, because I do want to talk about the story, because I think it's interesting when you really think about where this thing is headed with Jey Uso. We've talked about all the possible contenders you could have for Jey on Raw right now, right? There's a lot of different people you could have Jey in the mix with. Obviously, the newly formed Paul Heyman Dangerous Alliance, as we're calling them here, for the recall the WCW. You could have something with Jey Uso and Seth Rollins. You could have something with Jey Uso and Braun Breaker, given the history between those two. Obviously, whether the brand split matters or not, which sometimes I don't know if it does, there are plenty of other people you can throw into the mix here when it comes to potential challengers for Jey. We mentioned at WrestleMania, one of the reasons why I picked Logan Paul to beat AJ Styles is because I could absolutely see them doing a Jey Uso versus Logan Paul feud at some point. Again, whether anyone wants that or not, they are certainly setting Logan Paul up for something bigger after defeating someone like AJ Styles at WrestleMania. And so there's a lot of different challengers, and there are people that have not even named yet that we know could be in the mix. Throw Rusev back in there at some point. Drew McIntyre could easily come over and challenge. You've got all sorts of things that could tie into this. CM Punk, right? Like there's a lot of different stuff. But some of those are more realistic than others. But the one we know that is the most realistic at some point is going to happen. And it's just a matter of not if, but when. And that one is, of course, Sami Zayn. Because we saw all the hints that WWE was dropping on this week's edition of Raw. Sami comes out to celebrate with Jey, but if you looked at the way Jey reacted, if you go back and watch it, and you see the way that Jey reacts when Sami's music hits, right? It's not Jey all that excited. He's sort of a little bit hesitant. And we're trying to figure out, well, why is that, right? Why is he a little bit hesitant? It's Sami Zayn. Come on, it's Sami Uso here. But Jey, you can tell the body language a little bit hesitant. Well, then what happens? Well, Jey and Sami go up. They celebrate on the top rope. Sami comes back down. Jey goes up top, and he's celebrating. He's yeeting with the fans, all this other stuff. And then we get the big ooh moment, right? Some of the fans caught on in the building. A lot of you guys have already caught on. But you have that moment where you have Jey Uso on the top rope celebrating, yeet, and then you just have that one dramatic shot, that camera shot that WWE is so good at, where you see Sami Zayn standing behind him. He's just standing there, and it's not one of those where you quickly cut away. We always talk about this, you guys know, with all the stuff we've done storyline-wise, whether it was a bloodline or anything else. It's all about how you frame it, right? And the frame, you're sitting there seeing Sami just a little more stoic. The celebration is stopped for Sami. Jey's celebrating on the top, and Sami's just sitting there giving him a stare. There was also something before that where Sami is just looking at the championship as soon as he gets out there. He looks at Jey, but he looks a little bit more at the title. And then you have something like this, right? Where you can tell, even when you have this sort of over-the-top type hug, Sami's celebrating with Jey, Jimmy's out there, all this other stuff. But you can tell, look at the face of Jey Uso here. Whether intentional or not, it works for the story that they are going to tell eventually. Because these are two guys, as we know, who have been tied together for so long throughout the Bloodline saga, through all the ups and downs. These were the two that somehow became really one of the favorites, right? They became this favorite pairing that we just could never look away from, because you could just tell, Jey was always trying to figure out a way to keep Sami in the mix, right? Through all the stuff that Roman Reigns was doing and everything like that. Jey had that soft spot for Sami, and they bonded, and all those things that came together, right? But we have to remember that throughout all of this, Jey Uso winning the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, how did he get there? He got there by winning the Royal Rumble. And what did he do in that Royal Rumble? Well, he eliminated several people, but he also eliminated Sami Zayn. And if you remember, that's where, you had Drew McIntyre involved, all that. Jey accidentally kicked Sami off. And then you had some of those things coming out of it, right? Where, was it an accident? Was it not an accident? Okay, everything's fine. Well, Sami has to turn his attention to Kevin Owens with everything that happened in the unsanctioned match at Elimination Chamber, gets destroyed. Now he's back, right? But all these little things are starting to tie together. And again, just this visual right here, this is one of several visuals you could take away from that segment on Raw and realize that they are already laying the foundation for what is going to be something pretty incredible down the road between Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. And this is why when we talk about the long-term booking, right, the long-term stories, yes, we certainly have had talk about that over the past couple of days with a certain someone on this channel. But when you think about Triple H and sort of the long-term stuff and how every little detail seemingly matters, most of the time, maybe not all the time, but in this particular scenario, think about the way they have used Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. And so, if you tie in the fact that Jey eliminated Sami from the Royal Rumble, all right, well, Jey benefited from that. He goes on and wins the World Championship. He did what Sami did last year in terms of beating Gunther. But what has Sami never done? He's never been the world champion on the WWE main roster. He was the NXT champion at one point. He's never been the WWE champion. He's never been the world heavyweight champion. And so now it comes at the expense of Sami. Jey got there in a tiny part due to the fact that he had to eliminate Sami to do it, whether intentional or not, right? And so you can bring that back into the story. But there's something else, too, that you can bring into this. And we can't forget this part. Who was the person this past weekend who became really kind of a viral sensation on social media? It was Karrion Kross. And we talked about in the Raw reaction show that we did, everyone's kind of saying, hey, maybe we wouldn't mind the idea of maybe putting Karrion Kross with this new Paul Heyman faction, right? Throw him in there with maybe a little Braun Breaker, a little Seth Rollins. Maybe Karrion Kross could be an interesting person. Because remember all the things that they were tying in with Karrion Kross and Sami Zayn. There was at one point people wondering, are they going to do Karrion Kross versus Sami Zayn at WrestleMania? Was that going to be one of the matches? But if you think about it, the way they've kind of played up this whole Karrion Kross thing backstage, talking like to all these different people, trying to be basically the devil, right? Of trying to make these people make the decision. Are you going to be good? Or are you going to listen to the good? Are you going to listen to the bad? Right? And so, yet, when you look back at some of the things he's said, it's made a lot of sense because Sami has always been there, right? He's been the guy. And even though Sami brought that out a little bit in this, saying, you know what? You don't know, Jey, how much it hurt me to not be there for you with all the stuff that's been going on with Gunther. And you know how much it hurt me, basically to not be at WrestleMania. But, I had to be here to celebrate this moment with you. And so all that stuff that Karrion Kross talked about, how Sami has sort of basically sacrificed himself for everyone else. That's the moral of the entire story that they were kind of telling. And that how at some point Sami's got to put himself first, right? That's really been the whole point here when we talk about all those things. And of course, we could go down the rabbit hole of going back to every single little tiny interaction that Karrion Kross and Sami Zayn have had. But when you tie all those things together, you are going to get what I think is a great, great story where it is a matter of when is Sami Zayn going to let the Karrion Kross devil on this shoulder outweigh the good one on this shoulder, right? Like, when is that going to happen? And the way they set it up here, we always say it's going to maybe be a slow burn. Not with everything. Wasn't a slow burn with the Becky Lynch heel turn, right? She came back, won the titles, boom, heel turn. But it's going to be a little bit more that way, you would think, with Sami and Jey here. And I just feel like this is one where when you think about, again, what Triple H has put into these two guys and sort of the care that he's given both of them just from a presentation standpoint, right? He has got to be setting up something pretty exciting when it comes to these two. And I think it's great because, as we said, this is where you can tie in all the long-term story stuff. It just isn't something that happened at the Royal Rumble, and now we get there because of that. There's so many things in the past you can kind of call back to. And we talked about just all the different ways you can make this work. And so now Jey enters this title run. And we always say it's not a matter of just winning the championship. It's what do you do afterwards? That is how your title reign is going to be remembered. And we know there has been plenty of criticism online for Jey Uso, whether it's the wrestling stuff, whether it's the promos, all this other stuff. Completely understand. But this is, again, where your title reign is made. And it's not really just Jey. It's what WWE does to put him in a position to succeed now as the world champion. And if you have this as kind of your North Star, as someone else has said in the past couple days about the story, it's a great place to head towards because you do have everything you can tie in here with the Rumble, Karrion Kross, all this other stuff, the bloodline history between these two, and everything like that. And when you see the facial expressions, when you see the camera shots and everything that they put out there on Monday, those are the things I love. You guys know that. Those are the things that I enjoy more than anything else. Give us the little hints. Give us the teases of what's to come, but only if it makes sense. And this is one that absolutely, if they do it the right way, hey, maybe this is WrestleMania 42. Maybe we get there a lot quicker, right? But Sami Zayn trying to win his first ever World Heavyweight Championship and maybe coming at the expense of Jey Uso. There's a lot you can do with that when it comes to jealousy. Could you get old Sami Zayn with a little conspiracy theory action? All this other stuff. I think there's a lot of ways you can go with this, and I think it's going to be fantastic. So you guys let me know what you think. Are we getting there? We're going to get to Jey versus Sami. I know a lot of you already think that we are, and the hints were pretty obvious. But how do you want to see this play out? How could you see this playing out when it comes to the story between Jey Uso and Sami Zayn? When we get there for the World Heavyweight Championship match, it's got to happen at some point, right? Always appreciate your feedback, guys. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts on when, if, are we going to get Sami Zayn and Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight Championship.